Okay. So to start off, the number one thing that you have to kind of consider when driving hypercars is of course, the hybrid. It's kind of what LMU is famous for. They have like a really intricate hybrid modeling system. And if you want to do endurance events in these, it's always better to be on top of it. You can rely on a little bit on paid setups that just kind of figures things out for you, but every driver will be a little bit different that may affect this. So for teammates, you like between Gavin and JW, you guys will need to discuss on your kind of preferences after driving some laps in this. But virtual energy. So what is virtual energy? Virtual energy is a simulated tank that includes the physical gas fuel that you have in the car and the amount of hybrid electrical energy that you've used combined together. And this is measured by both axles. So what it does, what the virtual energy tank is it just measures how much consumption you've made between combining both gas and electric power, and that creates it. So number one thing to remember is WEC rules the virtual energy is public information. It's on the broadcast and it will be on your UI. So you will see what everybody else's virtual energy is. And you could you don't need to predict when somebody's going to go long. You will just be able to see it because they will have a higher percentage than you or lower percentage than you. Then you know if you're like on the right strat or not. So that's the benefit. You can also see the percentage tick down in real time. So you could tell that like by the end of the lap, you use like 2% more than the guy in front of you. You're probably using too much fuel. So very convenient that this is public info. Why this is important is because it's the totality of your virtual energy is measured by the combined combined energy consumption from both motors. You will underfuel the car because the tank will be bigger than what the virtual energy stint will last. Unless you just turn off the hybrid completely and just run it on a gas tank completely, then the full tank may last the whole way. But because you underfill the tank and then you supplement that with the hybrid, the specific amount of liters you put in is different depending on driver and depending on stint. So that's the thing that people mess up, is because they think like, oh, I've just put in the most amount of gas. If you overfuel the car, your car will be unnecessarily it'll be like giving yourself a weight penalty for no reason. So make sure that like when you fill the car, it's not like the max the tank can hold. Important thing to know about virtual energy: it is a hard cap. If the ticker gets to 0 and you go even an inch past 0%, you will instantly get a black flag. So people get black flags all the time in LMU, not realizing that the system is strict. So don't treat the 0% as like this is when you need to pit. You need to be in your box and stationary before it hits 0%. Always keep that in mind. Otherwise, you'll be giving yourself drive-throughs and it would suck.
Yes.
Because
I use less hybrid, I'd want a little more fuel.
Correct. Now, you don't want to cut it too close, because it is possible for virtual energy it is possible for you to like run out of physical fuel. The car can move and your virtual energy would be like 20% or 10%, and then you're just stuck on track. This is a WEC rule thing, and this is also an F1. Cars have to get back to the pits under their own power, otherwise it's a DNF. Period. So there's no tow system in this game. If you tow, you're done. A tow is just a straight DNF. So any accidents that happen, if you run out of fuel, get back to the pits. Try to get back to the pits. If you stop on track and you can't move, then yeah, your day is done. If you run out of physical fuel and you still have a little bit of deploy, make sure your deploy is set low and try to like coast with the electric deploy back to the pits. I've done that before. How viable that is, depending on like where on the lap do you run out of physical like gasoline fuel, just kind of depends on the car. I wouldn't really test it because I would rather this is not something you should plan for. You should just plan to not run out, period. But this is why virtual fuel is important. So qualifying set. A qualifying set is always going to have 100% virtual energy, but your fuel is going to be enough for like 5 laps. That's like normal. So if you
Mhm.
put on a quality set and it's 100% fuel, don't move that slider down because you don't want to, like you can make it to like, I don't know, like let's say 10% is like 5 laps. You can do that if you really want to, but like if you cross the qualifying with 0%, you'll get a black flag and you just get a start penalty. So setups will always have qualifying at 100% virtual energy because why not, you know? And then you just have to remember that you have enough fuel to physically do 5 laps, and then you go back into pits,
Mhm.
go back to 100, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you overfuel your car for what you want, you do that because you may sometimes want to use less hybrid for handling reasons. So you don't want to cut it super close and you want to be like, okay, let me add an extra lap of fuel in liters. That way I know I have leeway to turn down the hybrid. But generally speaking, when you come into the pits and you set the ratio, that stint is what you should generally like. The vast majority of your laps should, the hybrid setting you're going to run at. You shouldn't really be playing with it too much. I ran into this issue in AMS2. I was playing with the deploy and regen too much. I just physically ran out of fuel and I had to DNF on the last lap because I was just messing with it too much and I didn't give myself enough fuel to be able to play with it that much. You shouldn't really be playing with it too much, but you want to add a little bit more just so you have that leeway. So maybe like 2 or 3 laps extra in liters. That way you could like you could turn the hybrid all the way down and it wouldn't destroy your mileage. Otherwise, if you cut it close, you cannot touch the hybrid. Otherwise, you will get in trouble or you have to pit a lap early and you don't want to do that. Okay, batteries. This is already an LMU, but I could talk more about this. 100% SOC will make you lock your rears, so you want to avoid that. 0% SOC will make you lock your fronts. So Henkian, through his testing, says that if you are hitting about 80% of SOC, you probably want your deploy to be 80 kilowatts. That is Peugeot specific. Every car will be different except for the LMDHs. The LMDHs will all be the same. In hypercars, they're all different. So just keep that in mind. You don't rely on the same thing for each hypercar unless they're LMDHs because they're LMDHs are all spec hybrids. Around 20% SOC is when you want to deploy probably like 60. So like that's when you want to like deploy less, right? So just think like when you get above 60, when you get above 80, you want less deploy. When you get below 20%, when you're at 80, you want like more deploy to get rid of that, and then when you're around like 20, you want like more like regen, so you have the battery try to regen more, or you just turn down the deploy as well, or yeah, if that makes sense. Over deploying the hybrid can give you a very, very, very small boost. So sometimes somebody will get a really big run on you from behind, and it seems like they suddenly like have a little bit of extra. That's because the guy behind you just decided to turn out the hybrid deploy to max regardless of fuel. And then that way they have like it's basically everything is trying to power up. Hybrids in WEC and in LMU are not performance based, they're efficiency based. So the added horsepower is like a side effect. It's not like a main thing. So it's not like in iRacing when you put into attack mode, you go like super quick. You'll be like 2 seconds a lap or a second a lap faster. This is just to give you a little bit of extra down the straight if you feel like you need to. So you just crank that up to like 200, and then in the braking points, you turn that back down to whatever the hybrid you want to last a stint, and it'll give you like maybe like 5 extra horsepower or 3 extra horsepower, something like that. But remember, the hybrid in this game is always efficiency based, it's not performance based. But you can turn it up for like a side effect performance if you want. Okay, so motor map. This is what it should look like on your wheel when you're increasing deploy. So 200 kilowatts is the highest deploy you can have. You want your this is regen level, and regen level can also be at 200 kilowatts. You want your regen setting to be as high as you can without the front axle locking, generally speaking. Something to note about how the hybrid works in all cars, LMDHs or LMHs. The rules state that because the hybrid is for efficiency and not performance, there is a set like torque curve and a set like power curve that the car itself is mandated to create. And anytime you reduce EV power from the hybrid, the ICE power automatically starts making up for that. But there is like a slight delay on that, so just be careful when you transition between the two. And this will only matter for like radical transitions. So for like if you turn it down like super down really quickly, right? But it's the whatever hybrid that you are diminishing, the engine is meant to match whatever hybrid power loss that you turn down or turn up, either or. It's meant to be at a stable point. So this is important for drivability. So if you want oh, this is just talking about the fuel ratio. So like you can see like the game will tell you like how many laps is kind of predicted that you could do with virtual energy. The ratio is just like how much is in the tank versus like what the tank can actually hold. So this is just something to like be mindful of and try to like find out what the ratio is and if you need more or less based on this. And if you need less, like if you're using the hybrid a lot, like you have the hybrid deploy like a ton, you may want to reduce the ratio a little bit. And then if you don't like the hybrid a lot, then you want to maybe increase the ratio by a little bit. Okay, drivability. Um, traction control. Onboard traction control is just the overall computer, how aggressive it is. TC power cut is very specifically wheel spin, kind of going straight. So TC power cut is on exit. If you're getting a lot of wheel spin, you want more power cut. If you feel like the car is bogging on exit, like you feel like you're not getting good runs, even though you're on good lines, you carry enough speed, you may have too high of a power cut. You want to reduce that. Slip angle is kind of what it sounds. Basically, tolerance is on what the car is doing when it slips. This is both front and rear axles. So you got to remember that LMH cars are four-wheel drive cars, practically speaking. So like how much the car is cutting out is going to be dependent on this setting alone. And if you're happy with the car, but you feel like you want like more like on throttle rotation, or you feel like you want like this is just basically on throttle stuff. If your on throttle is like sluggish, this is like specifically what you change. For hybrids, this is where a little bit of practice is kind of necessary. If you feel like the car is understeering a lot, you need to reduce the hybrid because you want more power. You want the rear wheels to make more power, essentially, because that will push the car around. Um, if you want if the car is too oversteery, you can try to increase the hybrid power so that the front tires will pull the car more. The Peugeot wingless Peugeot is unrealistically set at a very low deploy range because the devs, I guess, wants this car to be competitive and not be like crap. So it's most hybrid cars is deploy the front axles hybrid deploy at 190 kilometers per hour, but the Peugeot is set to 130. So it kicks on really early through a corner, and you probably want to rely like that to make pace, but it's gonna make the car. This is why the car generally plows mid corner, is because it has a lot of power going into the front axles really early, and you could play with that with electric motor map. So that's what specifically like I would recommend is try to find the motor map kilowatt that you're happy with on the balance that doesn't make the SOC like 0% or 100%. So yeah, you just have to kind of play with that and see how that's like.
Question on the TC slip angle. Is that like TC2 or not really?
Power cut is TC1, slip angle is TC2.
Okay, gotcha.
So iRacing does actually have this. So iRacing would have like a TC1 and TC2. They don't have like an overall for both, but this one has like overall for both and then a TC1 and TC2.
Okay, so the onboard is both, basically.
Yes, the onboard is both at the same time.
That helps.
Okay, brake migration, new feature. Brake migration is a specific setting in hypercars only. GT3s don't have them, GTEs don't have them. LMP2s don't have them. This is very specifically a hypercar thing. And the reason why brake migration is a thing is because with how heavy the motor is, the cars lose downforce really rapidly under braking. So it's a car that's really aggressive on aero in mid speeds and like high speeds with the motor, but then when it slows down, it starts to become like a pig. And that's like very normal for these cars. They're just kind of heavy prototypes because of the hybrid. So the brake migration is what this means is that when you hit the brakes and you're going through the various stages of braking, like threshold and then trail, throughout different points of that braking, the brake bias would automatically change for you. And then by the time you get off the brakes completely, the brake bias will reset to whatever it is you have set in this menu. Brake migration is important because if you're under braking and you're having issues with the car, sometimes changing the brake bias is not going to help your drivability. Sometimes you just need to change the brake migration. So let's say like you're hitting the brakes hard into turns 1 and you're trying to rotate the car and the car slows down fine, like it doesn't plow, it doesn't lock, but as you're trailing to the apex, the car suddenly forces its nose offline. You need a lower brake migration because what's happening is that the brake migration is moving the car's brake word like forward or in a way that's making the fronts kind of lock during your trailing. So pay attention to this. Try to just find a setting that you're generally happy with. We're not expecting like esports level performance anyways. We're going to be in like mid servers anyways. So I don't think a lot of people are even going to touch this. But if you touch this and you can make yourself more comfortable with this, you'll probably have kind of an advantage around people around you who don't know what this is. So that's what brake migration is, a very specifically hypercar only feature.
So that's a mid corner.
Yes, it basically controls the brake bias. It automatically adjusts the brake bias while you're braking.
So what would be like? How would moving it up or down affect the car?
If you move it more forward, you can see it says 2%, 2.5 F. That means while you're braking, it's gonna move it forward. If more forward on the brakes means that the car is going to the nose is going to push more. Rearward means that the rear is going to push more, which means oversteering. So if you think of it that way, and you're like, you just have to kind of know, like in the middle of braking, what your car is doing, and try to feel that out. If you're braking and you're throwing the car in the corner, and then like the rear is stepping out a lot, try to move the brake migration like pointed forward more. And these should always be subtle changes. So it should always be like 1 or 2 clicks. If you're doing like more than like 3 clicks, you're probably doing something wrong, and you need to solve whatever issue you're having in a different setting. Because eventually, if you are too extreme with the migration, you'll just snap spin the car and you have no idea why, basically. Because remember, the migration is it's physically moving the brake bias for you in the middle of like various points of braking, which happens all in like split seconds, right? So it's just like adjusting the brake bias like really quickly, right? And if your car is just not, if it's just doing weird stuff, then you probably like mess with this too much, right? So probably in your mental mind, and the setup that Henkian has already this for you. So that's kind of his recommended brake migration. Like you shouldn't deviate too much from that. So I'm only telling you this just so you could like move this up or down just to see if you could find better performance in certain corners more. I just wanted to inform you. You can adjust the brake bias overall, and that's for an overall feeling in the car. So if you feel like the car is just generally understeering in like all parts of the track, then that's where the default the brake migration brake bias changes would come into play. That should be kind of normal for you because you're doing brake bias changes in most road cars.
So I find the rears locking a lot, like at the start, and I find that the car is kind of hard to rotate mid corner. So should I like bump forward brake bias and then bump back brake migration?
Yes.
Okay.
Try that. Yes. Remember that what makes this really complicated is that there's also the hybrid regen and deploy. So sometimes your rears might be locking because you have an SOC at a bad level, right? So anytime your car is doing something wrong, the first thing you should check is your SOC level, because usually that's the
Mhm.
answer. And then the brake bias is more just like minutia handling characteristics that you can improve.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
like last night when you were practicing, you were hitting 100%. I told you not to worry about it, right? Hankian was just like,
Mhm.
no, that's just gonna lock one of the axles. So, like, you just need like
That
the higher the regen is, or sorry, the higher the SOC is, or the lower the SOC is. When it gets to the extreme levels, it will affect the axle, and it'll make that axle easier to lock.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I was
locking,
trying 60 kilowatts, and that did a lot. That I think
yeah.
that was better.
So if you are at 60 kilowatts and you like how that works, and you're looking at the SOC and it's like I said, if you're hitting like 80 or 85, it's fine. Just don't go too much over 80, right?
Mhm.
You just wanna avoid getting to like closer to 100, because the higher it is, the more the computer's gonna make it stop working, right? Um, but if you're at 60 kilowatts for the front axle and you just like how that feels, and your hybrid
Mhm.
SOCs levels are fine throughout the lap, then that's where I would look at brake migration or brake bias, depending on
Mhm.
what your issue is.
If I find it getting a bit too high, could I lower the regen level? Or would that not be
Um,
a good idea?
you can, you can, you can lower the regen level. So in the rules, regenerative braking is not supposed to serve as a secondary brake bias. That is actually in the rules in real life. I think LMU probably has a little bit of like
Well, no, I mean like if I find it getting to 100, does it do anything to the car if I like lower the regen level so that I don't get to 100?
it shouldn't. You might lose like a tad.
Okay.
You might lose like a minutia braking performance. So just be on the
Mhm.
lookout for that. But like it shouldn't be a dramatic decrease in braking
Yeah,
performance.
not nearly as much as being at 100.
Yes, yeah. Well, not nearly as much as you would expect, because in F1, the hybrid regenerative braking can really help slow down the car a lot. So that's
Hmm.
like, but in sports car racing, they don't want hybrids to actually like affect braking performance, because every
Mhm.
hybrid is very different sized. So for example, the LMDHs, like the Cadillac GTP, that hybrid you can only deploy and regen at 50, whereas in the Peugeot is 200. So that's a huge
Hmm.
difference in hybrid size, right? So it's a
I see.
huge advantage to the Peugeot if the hybrids can help slow the car down. And it's not supposed to, but inevitably there will be an effect on that. And I think in LMU there's a little bit more of an effect with the car slowing down with regen. But yeah, regen is a tool for you to try to get the SOC within where you want, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
That's you change the regen in reaction to whatever you want and deploy.
Okay.
Cool. JW, everything makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. ARBs. AR anti-roll bars does what the name says. It blocks roll. So roll is good for grip in R Factor 2 engine. So you want more grip. So the lower you have your anti-roll bars, the better grip you have. But
Mhm.
it's going to change the balance dramatically. So that's why you don't want to just like detach it, and detaching it is unrealistic. I think I wrote on the forums once, or on the subreddit, like what this detach means, because in real life cars can't just detach their own roll bars while running. People think that that's like a typo. That detach basically means that it's just like so far low that it's almost not working, basically. So you should think of it that way. You should think of detach as like just a position rather than the roll bar coming off. Um,
Mhm.
but the reason why you don't want to set the roll bars to always low is because then the car may become undrivable. So you want the roll bars kind of sometimes high, just for the sake of like responsiveness and aggressiveness in your handling that you're happy with, that you can make pace. But if you're
Mhm.
finding yourself sliding a lot in certain like axles, try reducing anti-roll bars, either the front or the rear, because lowering
Mhm.
the anti-roll bar is just good for grip in our Factor 2 engine. Okay, tires. Important. Tires in LMU are not like tires in WEC and LMU are not like tires anywhere else in motorsports. Tires in LMU are not performance based, they're temperature based. I'm sure you're seeing a trend. WEC really loves to just take something that is performance based and turn it into something else. So just keep that in
Mhm.
mind. So hards, mediums, softs all theoretically in their optimal window should run the exact same lap time. The hards are harder, so they do have a little bit more tire life, but lap time wise, they should all kind of be within the ballpark. So Gavin, when you said like earlier this week, you're like, "Oh, I ran just all the hards, but I haven't tried the medium, so I don't know what like my medium pace is." There's no such thing. There's no such thing. There is just the pace you have. There's a race pace and then there's quality pace. And if the tires are not in their window, you're just gonna be bad. So you put the tires on looking at what the surface temperature is. So you have to really monitor, and this is where your teammates can help each other. If somebody is spectating you, being your spotter, it's important for them to like look at the temperature windows and try to predict when their next pit stops tires they probably need. So at Bahrain, this was a screenshot for Cutter when I did it with Travis. Um, we did top left hards because it's a really heavy right turn track, and we found that the temperature of the tire was just shooting up on the left front very specifically. So we just decided to put a hard there, and it ended up working better. The balance is going to feel a little strange on the straights or through slower corners. But then like once the tire is like heated up, it will feel much better than putting on all of the mediums. So this is just important to think about is like the temperature of the tire. Actually, the next page will show you. You can see that like there's a temperature range for each of these: soft, medium, and hard. And like you just have to. I'll give you a link to this, and then you could kind of go by this with the optimal temperature and try to make sure that the tire temperature is not pushing into the ranges of the other ones, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where tire strategy is going to be important, and this is where teammates have to tell each other what they feel like the temperatures, what temperature they're putting in what tire, because that will determine what you want to put on. So strategy is like at Bahrain, you will probably see people put on front left hards, but they may put on the whole left side hards and the whole right side mediums. You will see some people just probably put on all mediums, right? Whatever tire you pick, you will need to use again. So picking what tire to actually use is important because they will come back when you need to double stint a tire. So that brings into the second part that's important for tires. And if I had to go back to this screen. LMU has tire allocations, which is different than iRacing. So what that means is that LMU, when you start the event, you have a set number of tires that you could use that you can grab from. That's it. You can't do more. So when the allocation they give you is not enough to take all 4 tires every stop. So Gabe and I put the sheet together where it keeps track of tire allocations. Use that sheet to just make sure that you guys are on track. And we don't know the exact number of tires we're going to be given at Bahrain. Update the sheet when you find out, because the server should tell you. The server will be like, you have.
I think it tells you I think it's 27 or something like that. It's in the
Okay, 27.
It should. I'm not sure. It's in the practice for
Okay,
Bahrain.
you guys can find out.
Think.
When you find out, update the sheet. And then that's 27 each. So that's 27 individual tires, not 27 sets.
Yeah.
Important to note, and this is realistic, qualifying tires needs to be carried over into a race. So when I did Cutter with Travis, it was actually an interesting discussion between me and him where we were like, okay, I put in a good lap. There's still more life in the tires, but I know that these tires are coming off to be reused in the race later. So these are scuffed because they've been scuffed.
Mm.
So we were like, how much more do we want to use up those tires for track position? The answer is usually never, but it just depends on where you start, right? I've seen people blanket just not qualify just so they have a fresh set of tires for the race period. I don't know that I would recommend that because there's only 2 classes, so there's going to be you're going to be at the back of a lot of bad people and you might get involved in a wreck. Sometimes people just put on 2 laps and they just return to the pits and sit out the rest of qualifying. But other people who are try hard will destroy a set of tires just to get like the front row. And I've seen people do that. Like in my split at Cutter, I saw the top 5 qualified drivers. they all destroyed their tires. They all just basically ran the entire way. And if you destroy a set of tires during qualifying, you have one less set to rely on during the race. I guess they were just confident they could just keep double stinting, right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you just use the just not double stint the first stint?
What do you mean?
Like, wouldn't it be better to like? Because do you have to double stint each set of tires?
If you were to make the only reason why you would double stint is to make allocation.
Mm-hmm.
So like what you can do theoretically,
Actually, I have LNE booted up. Hold on.
what you could do theoretically is you could double stint all 4 tires. That way, later on in a much further pit stop, you could just take all 4 tires. Does that make sense? So you double stint 2, that you could double. If you double, so like what a lot of people do is they double stint only 1 tire, and then they just keep double stinting, and eventually they have to double stint 2. So they double stint as little as possible, but you could just get that pain out of the way early by double stinting all 4, and then that way you have tires saved. You have you have a fresher amount of tires saved for later in the race. That's just a conversation between you and your teammate.
Yeah.
Probably a good idea when there's more traffic to double stint more.
Yes. It's also going to be a good idea to double stint during the night because of cooler temperatures. Okay.
26 tires, yes. So 26 divided by 4, that's something. I don't
know. 26 divided by 4 is 6.5.
So you get 6 stops and 2.
Yes, but don't forget, you need to carry that includes qualifying.
Yes. So
you need to save tires a lot. Tire saving is a big thing.
Oh my god.
This is 8 hours of racing, by the way. So this is not even like 6 hours or something. Yeah, so
and it's 10 stops if we don't fuel save, 9 stops if we get one more, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Scary, right?
Damn.
This is fun.
Yeah.
So the first thing you guys got to do, figure out what hybrid settings you find the car comfortable at. And remember, there's 2 factors to that. A, drivability, because hybrid settings in real hypercars are kind of just down to driver preference. And then after that, you got to make sure that whatever preference you have is not ruining the SOC. Also try to see what the driving hybrid is like when you're lifting and coasting at whatever, because the deploy kilowatts may be different between pushing and lifting and coasting. That actually may be a different setting for you. You have to like kind of at least be a little bit prepared for that in mind.
Yeah. Just while we're talking about fuel saving,
yes.
LMU tells you how to lift and coast, right? Like it has the fuel calculator and it works with the car.
Yes, they do.
So how does that work? I mean, I guess we can talk about that another time.
Truth be told, I haven't looked into that just because I didn't. Just because I didn't use it for my thing, but better drivers will use it. I think what it does. So I know how it works theoretically. I just never directly used it myself. If you set a specific target in your setup, and then you're running, the lights on the dash will come on, and the specific like fuel saving dash lights is telling you when to lift. So it's actually telling you when to like how early to lift into a corner. So that's actually really useful because it's like if you know you need to like extend, you just tell the computer to tell you how to drive, and the computer tells you how to drive through lights. So lights come on, you lift. And then you brake however you want, and then when the lights come on, you go back on power again. It's pretty cool, right? Technology.
Yeah. So JW, would you wanna do like try to get the extra lap out so that we can have 9 stints instead of 10?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then you do that while double stinting as well. And usually your safe stints is a good double stint because you're not using your tires a lot, right? And how you use it, at the end of the day, it's still a racing sim. So how you drive to save tires versus not is just the same way you do it in iRacing. You know, how aggressively you're turning the wheel, how aggressively you're diving into corners, what is your apex speed, right? That's all relevant. So if you're scrubbing your tires a lot, you're using the tires a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Final part, and then we're done. Pitting UI. Number one thing that people miss and make sure you do not run afoul of this. The UI in LMU is unintuitive. Whatever you have for fuel ratio and virtual energy, that is telling your pit crew what you want to leave the pit as, not what they're gonna put in. So to simplify this, let's say that you are at 30% virtual energy, right? And you want to add 70 because you want 100, right? You don't select 70 virtual energy, because what's going to happen is you're going to pit and then they're going to let you go at 70%. They're not That's not adding. That's telling the pit crew what you want, period. So your
Yeah.
virtual so whatever you're pitting generally should always just be your max. And you will change how much liters is put in the car directly through fuel ratio.
Mhm.
So if you want less fuel because you're going to be using more hybrid, you just kind of tick the fuel ratio down like a couple. You should have that figure in mind. You shouldn't guess. If you need to guess, it's always better to have the car overfueled than underfueled, because you don't want to run out of fuel before virtual energy runs out, you know? This is where practice come in. And then if you do like a stint, you could see how much you have left in fuel and whatever.
Mhm.
The LMU right now is, so in iRacing, you're able to change the pit stop for the driver that's driving when they come in. LMU is supposed to have that feature. I'm not expecting that feature to work this weekend because they haven't announced that that's going to work. And right now, it broke in the first event that they did, and they're taking all year to fix it. So when you are driving, make sure that you're familiar that the first option is like left front, second option is right front. Like the first option of the tire is always going to be left, and then the second option is always going to be right. So if you remember that, you'll be able to do this while you're driving. And this is really, really important because like I blew my first event for my team because I was too busy trying to figure out, like trying to read the text and figure out, that I just wrecked while doing that. So you want to avoid doing that as well. So get comfortable with this menu specifically. So like,
Important thing that I learned about it. If you accidentally click up at the very start,
yeah.
then you go immediately to brake change, and that takes about 2 minutes, and is very very easy to fat finger on. So I've done that before. So beware.
I don't know.
Finally, this is the Bahrain track map. Um, Bahrain doesn't have corner names, so specific landmarks, try to remember them as a number. Turns 1, and then 2 and 3 is the quick chicane. The next heavy braking is 4, and then the really annoying like hairpin at the end of sector 2 is 10. And then like the top of the penultimate corner is 13, and then like the final corner is listed as 2 corners in Bahrain. So just be mindful of that when you're counting. The reason why it's listed that way is because you can be more specific. So like I'm having an issue at corners 14, not 15, meaning that you're having an issue on entry, right? I'm having an issue on corners 15, meaning you're having an issue on exit. If there's a wreck, you could warn your driver, hey, 14, wreck at 14 means that it's at the apex, or it's like coming to the apex. Wreck at 15 means it's all on exit, right? Most of the time, you're gonna warn your driver about issues on 15 because people are gonna run wide, they're gonna wreck, they're gonna dive or whatever. So
I don't touch the paint on 15.
yeah, so LMU different to iRacing. iRacing does have this rubbered line and there's grip differences on and off line, but it's actually very subtle. LMU's rubbered line and non-rubbered line is dramatic, and it's even more dramatic if it's on track or off track. So I told you this yesterday, Gavin, while you're practicing. You cannot think of the track like you think of in iRacing. You don't think of what is space for me to open up and cut. In LMU, you think, where is the racing line? Period. There's almost no exceptions to that. And racing lines will change depending on where people drive. But just be aware that like when you're driving, do not think space on track like you do in iRacing. Think, where is the line? Period. If the line doesn't seem optimal, too bad. Use it, because you will have grip powering off anyways than if you just open something up and try to get a better run or try to get a better line. At the beginning of the race, this matters less because the track is going to be green. But then when it starts getting darker, try to just pay attention to where it darkens up, and then you can kind of open up and run whatever line you want to try to groove into at the start of the race. But like pretty close, you should just follow the line eventually, if that makes sense. Okay, that is it. I am done. Do you have any of you have questions? Oh yeah, big corners would be 1, 4, 10, 11, and then 13 is the top, and then 14 and 15. So just remember those specific numbers because that will probably be like what the both of you talk about the most.
For driver swaps, what's
What's
the
the H and
UI like?
LMDH stand for?
Good question.
It doesn't stand for anything. It's an
No, I'm kidding.
it's one of the few acronyms in the history of humanity that is literally just a letter just to be there. The reason why it doesn't stand for anything is because IMSA wanted to call it Le Mans Daytona hypercars. Oh, sorry, Le Mans Daytona hybrids. But WEC wanted it to be called Le Mans Daytona hypercars. And they never like reconciled with that. So the FIA just said, fuck it, we're just gonna put an H. And that was their compromise. It's really stupid. It is like the most like motorsports thing in the entire universe. The fact that like they can't agree to that and they quibbled over it, and then the FIA just said, "Fuck it, we'll just do this as a compromise," and it ends up being stupid.
So JJ, for the driver swaps, what's the UI like on that? Like, how
Yeah.
do we?
If I go back
Work
to
that.
the pit menu, I don't have a screenshot of this, but on one of the menus, it will have an option that says next driver. And then if you have that
Oh
as
my God.
none, you'll stay in. Yeah, it'll be in this menu. And then if it's
Okay.
none, you'll stay in the car. And then you have to go through the list of people that is connected in the server, or go through a list of people that you've registered as a team. So for you, it'll just be you and JW. If JW is not in the server, his text will be grayed out, but you will it will be an option to see. So you can see like, oh,
Got
JW is an option for later if whatever.
Okay. So if
Something
you're in the lobby, you could just be sucked into the car.
correct. So be prepared. Yes.
Okay.
You can't be just sucked into the car. Again, I think this is a worse system than iRacing, but whatever.
Yeah.
Important thing to note.
They gotta work with what they got.
Right. Important thing to note. Drivers who are signed up to the team currently do not have a minimum drive time. So I can assign Gabe to the team, and you will see Gabe as somebody who is available to drive, but he doesn't need to drive. So the rule is that as long as a certain driver change happens, then the game is satisfied. The game doesn't care about how like in iRacing you have to declare your drivers. You don't need to declare your drivers in LMU. You just need to set the lineup, and then anybody in that lineup can join your server just to help out, or maybe as an emergency sub if possible. Right?
That's cool.
I'm guessing that's
like
a
that.
WEC thing that they don't have minimum drive times, or
They just don't have the minimum drive times as a
I know
feature yet.
IMSA does.
Yeah, WEC does have that. LMU just doesn't have
Oh,
that coded in
okay.
yet.
Element
Yeah.
just doesn't have it. Got
Yeah.
it.
All right, cool.
Gotcha.
It's done Band-Aid style. Yeah.
Any final questions before I let you go to get on track?
I think I'm good.
Pretty comprehensive, right? I will share
Yeah.
both this presentation and my notes that I wrote for it. You guys in the future, or like tomorrow because it's this weekend or something, or later this weekend, you guys can glance at my notes, and that should be a decent refresher. And then I will link the both of you. Or actually, I'll give the link in the Bahrain channel.
You know, I really think this is kind of a good way to, or I think this is like the perfect weekend to do it because this is the last like endurance event of the year, and Tarkov releases the next day.
Yep.
So
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Cool.
all
Yeah,
right.
good. Good.
Yeah, it's very cool. Thank you, man.
I'm
That
pretty
was really good, actually.